In this video, we're going to talk about basic probability. Alright, so the basic definition of probability is this, right? Probability tells us the likelihood of an event happening. And this is kind of the formal way to describe how to find the probability. Right? The probability of an event happening is going to be, you could represent it with a fraction like this, right? Where the top number is the number of ways the event can happen, and the bottom is the total number of outcomes. Right? And when I say outcomes, I'm talking about the total number of things that could happen. Okay? So the probability of an event happening is the number of ways the event can happen divided by the total number of outcomes. Alright, so you really need to internalize this formula. Right? And it's going to be pretty easy in the beginning, but when we get to some more difficult ones, you always have to go back to thinking about this formula. Alright, so let's just do a couple real simple ones. If you roll a number one, if you roll a six-sided die, what's the probability of rolling a 4? Alright, so how many, first of all, before I actually get the answer, I want to talk a little bit about notation. How do we write this, right? Well, we could represent it like this. Right? And we would read this by saying the probability of getting a 4, right? It's kind of like function notation. The probability of getting a 4, right, and you probably already know, is 1 out of 6, right? And I want to go back to this definition, right? Why is it 1 out of 6? Well, the top number is 1 because there's one way that we can get a 4, right? The top is the number of ways the event can happen. There's one way to get a 4. The bottom is the total number of outcomes, right, which is 6 because there's 6 possible numbers that could be rolled. Right? Number two, another pretty simple one. If you roll a six-sided die, what's the probability of rolling a number that is less than 5? Right? And for notation on this one, we could kind of do something like this. The probability of getting a number, actually let me write it this way. Probability of getting a number less than 5. Right? That would be kind of the shorthand way to write that. The probability of getting a number less than 5. Right? And again, I want us to think, even though this is easy, I want us to think about this formula. Right? So the top number is the number of ways that event can happen. So if we have a six-sided die, how many ways are there to get a number that's less than 5? Well, that would be getting a 1, 2, 3, or 4. So that would be 4 on the top. Right? 4 is the number of ways to get a number less than 5. Over the total number of outcomes, that's 6. So this probably would be 4, 6, or we could reduce that to 2/3. Alright, a couple facts that you need to know about probability. First, probability could be written as a fraction, decimal, or a percentage. Right? And I will accept any one of those. Right? A lot of times we're probably going to be dealing with fractions, but we could just as easily use decimals or percents. Right. Also, you need to know this. A probability must be greater than or equal to 0, and it also has to be less than or equal to 1. Right? In other words, the smallest a probability can be is 0, right? And the biggest it can be is 1. Right? So it's got to be not only in between 0 and 1, but also it could be 0 or it could be 1. Right? So the smallest it could be is 0, the biggest it could be is 1. Right? And let's real quick think about what that means. What would it mean if we have a probability of 0? Right? If something has a probability of 0, that means it could never happen. What about 1? If something has a probability of 1, that means it's going to happen for sure. Or you could say it has a 100% chance. Right? This is a 0% chance. This is a 100% chance. Alright, so let's do a couple more examples. So these will get a little bit trickier. Alright, so you have a bag that contains the marbles shown below. Right? So we've got these marbles, some blue marbles, some green marbles, and let's say that the marbles are also numbered as shown here. Suppose you're going to pick one marble from the bag at random. Okay, probability of picking a blue marble for 3, probability of picking an even number marble for 4. Right? Go ahead and pause and write down your answer. Okay, these should have been pretty simple. Also, I should have said, let's use our probability notation. Okay, so the probability of getting a blue, I could represent it like this, right? So B represents the event getting a blue marble. So the probability of picking a blue, what's that probability going to be? That's going to be 5 out of 9, right? Because what's the number of ways of getting a blue? There's 5 ways to get a blue over the total number of outcomes, right? There's 9 things that could happen, 9 marbles that you could pull out, so 5 out of 9. Right? What's the probability of picking an even numbered marble for 4? Right? So we could say this, probability of an even, right? Where E represents the event getting an even marble. Right? So the probability of getting an even numbered marble, well, how many ways are there to get an even numbered marble? 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 ways out of the total number of possibilities, or total number of outcomes, 4/9. All right, 2 more. And I'd like you to pause and read these and think this through on your own. So go ahead and pause and do this, please. All right, let's check in. All right, so this one is talking about the probability of getting a marble that's blue and even. This one's the probability of getting a marble that's blue or even. Right, and you got to really think about what these mean. The difference between and or here. Right? In terms of the notation, we can just say something like this. Probability of getting a blue and an even. Right? Probability that our one marble is both blue and also even. Right? And for here, we could write it this way. Probability of getting a marble that is either blue or it's even. Okay? And one way that I kind of like to think about this is you can kind of imagine this as the event that we're talking about, that's the event that would cause you to win, right? That seems to be kind of an easy way to think about it. Okay? So for 5, imagine you would win if your marble, or the marble that we pick, is both blue and even. Right? So how many chances are there to get a marble that's both blue and even? Well, there's this marble and there's this marble. So there's 2 possible ways to get a marble that's blue and even out of, again, there's 9 possible outcomes. Okay? All right, for 6, probability of picking a marble that is blue or even. Right? So in other words, we can kind of think about it this way. Right? We could think about saying we would win if the marble that's picked is blue or if it's even. So what's the total number of ways to get a marble that's blue or even? Well, there are 5 that are blue, and then the ones that are even that haven't been counted yet are the 6 and the 8. So there's 5, 6, 7. 7 that are blue or even out of 9. All right, one last thing here. Again, I really want you to make sure you have this idea internalized. The probability of an event happening is the number of ways that event can happen out of the total number of outcomes. Okay. Last thing I want you to think about. Let's say you buy some raffle tickets and enter a drawing. What do you need to know in order to determine the probability of you winning? Think about that for a second. Pause if you need to. Right? Well, if we think about this formula, the probability of an event happening is the number of ways for that event to occur divided by the total number of outcomes. Right? So if we were trying to figure out the probability of winning, in this case, what do we need to know? We need to know 2 things, right? Because our fraction has 2 parts. The first thing we need to know, the top, is the number of ways to win, right? Or in this case, more specifically, I probably should have written it as, well, the number of raffle tickets we bought, right? The number of raffle tickets we bought, right? And then on the bottom, that's the total number of outcomes, right? So we could say that's the total number of tickets. Okay, so not that hard, but again, I really want you to internalize this because when we get to more complicated ones, you really need to think about this idea.